All right, thank you everyone. Thank you for joining our virtual panel discussion on the inconvenient truth about biotech startup. This event is co-organized by StartCentral and the Experimental Drug Development Center A-Star. Today, we are very honored to have four distinguished speakers to share their expertise and insights, in particular, the financing aspects and the strategies for biotech startup. Without further ado, allow me to quickly introduce our guests for today's session. So first up, we have Dr. Peppi Prasit. He's the CEO Emeritus and the Chair of Scientific Advisory Board of Inception Science. Dr. Prasit has served as key advisor for Versant Ventures since 2011. The Inception Sciences was Versant's first discovery engine with the goal to translate new opportunities for academic to industry quality therapeutic candidates. To date, Inception Sciences has launched 7 companies and received more than $135 million in funding commitments. Dr. Prasit played pivotal role in discovery of several marketed drugs, and he is widely recognized for his accomplishment as a drug hunter. Next in line, we have Mr. Terig Hughes, who is the founding member and CFO of Biosciences, a Singapore-based biotech startup founded in 2018. With a focus on cancer drug development, Terig has extensive management experience in growing businesses with portfolios up to $400 million in annual turnover. Terig has over 25 years of international experience in healthcare, scientific, and medical publishing, information, and analytics. Adding to our panel of financial expertise today, we have Mr. Thomas Teo. Thomas is the founder and principal consultant of Alpha Square Advisors. He has more than 10 years of experience in banking and finance sector. Previously, he has worked on research in the areas of asset allocation, finance, risk management with Singapore Sovereign Wealth Fund GIC, and global consulting firm Oliver Wyman. In recent years, he has also consulted for one of the region's largest bank on strategic and transformational project with Sage Capital. And finally, to anchor today's discussion, we are very honored to have a great friend of A-Star, Mr. Ng Choon Peng, co-founder, CEO of immunoSCAPE as our moderator today. Choon Peng is no stranger to the A-Star family. He's also certainly no stranger to biopharmaceutical business. He started his career in J&J, rose through the ranks as International Product Manager, Director of Sales, Marketing, and Country Manager. Before he founded immunoSCAPE, Choon Peng was also the Senior Director of Fund Biocluster in A-Star. Prior to A-Star, Choon Peng was the CEO Asia for Leo Pharma, a multinational pharmaceutical company headquarters in Denmark. Choon Peng is also a serial entrepreneur where he started 2 companies, then Tembusu Healthcare that distribute allergy, respiratory, and dermatology products across Asia. And earlier, he's also founded Chris Bio, that provides a company that provides downstream bioprocessing for antibodies in a cheaper and faster way. Now, I'll hand over the floor to Choon Peng to kickstart the virtual session. Choon Peng, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Vanessa, and thank you, the A-Star team, for inviting the group of us to this webinar. And I'm very excited because I just getting to know Peppi, Terig, and Thomas. We already found that there are a couple of things that we potentially can work together on. And that's how entrepreneurship is, right? You meet a group of people, you see how we can do stuff together. And that has been pretty much my story for the last 3.5 years as CEO and co-founder of immunoSCAPE. And the topic today is quite interesting. It says inconvenient truths about biotech startups. Personally, I think there's nothing inconvenient about truths. We just have to approach them. And from talking to the panel members, they are all very willing to share about their own experiences. I don't think they feel that there's anything that is inconvenient about sharing with you, and that's what I'm excited about. And please, in your Q&A, ask the difficult questions. Because this is what we are here for. And we understand there are about, from the organizers, that there are about 190 of you out there. Many of you are scientists working hard in the lab, trying to change the world through the technology you're developing. Keep at it, do the best that you can, because we need the technologies in order for this ecosystem to flourish. now, and several of you are also from industry, looking into this sector. So for those in the industry, you play a role too, because we want to partner with you as a, smaller teams, biotechs. We want to be engaged deeply with you, and there are others who are just finding this topic interesting. When I first came into A-Star, this biotech ecosystem was actually still nascent, and now it has actually grown quite a bit, and that's why we have this very distinguished panel group assembled today. So I'm gonna just uh, um, get myself. I will introduce briefly about how immunoSCAPE got started, but I will also want to invite my fellow panel members to also share your personal experience uh, on how the companies you got involved in got started, right? For Peppi is that you are incubating and you are a drug hunter. So you see some of these companies getting started, and how what your personal experiences and observations. And also for Thomas, you're helping people raise funds, right? Helping companies raise funds, right? So you will probably see some of these companies, how they got started. And of course, Terig, as a CFO, you have your personal experience with AUM, and that's doing very well. So in some ways, through this approach, tell the story, tell your own personal story, and introduce yourselves. I sort of, I'll start off first, right? Now, immunoSCAPE was started out of a spin-off of a technology from Singapore Immunology Network of A-Star. So at that point of time, I was as a senior director in the Biomedical Research Council, BMRC, reporting to Ben Seed, the executive director. And I was looking to see how research done in the research institutions can get commercialized. So I secured funding for $62 million. We got EDDC founded. That's the beginning of that. Took me 1 year to secure the funding, and Eugene Gunn, my deputy, operationalized it and handed over to Denny Soon. So that's my passion: translating technology into the marketplace. And then now with, of course, the founding of we in the process, I got to know the scientists, and I got to know staff from ISIGN, Alexander Nadine, co-founder, COO, and then Michael Fellings, who is a postdoc of Evan Newell, the founder, the PI for that project work. So 4 of us came together and founded immunoSCAPE. Evan Newell remains in academia, and he was an advisor to the company, but 3 of us are full-time. And that worked out very well. Evan Newell continued in A-Star, and later on relocated to Fred Hutch Cancer Institute to Seattle. And then he's now still very much involved through the various conferences. And the 3 of us are full-time, because investors want to see that commitment of full-time people moving the project, moving the company forward. And managed to get a Series A funding round from University of Tokyo Edge Capital, closed Series B in January 2020. And now we are expanding in the US. 20 people in the lab here in Singapore in the shared lab called NSG, and then 3 people in the US expanding very quickly. So this is the story of immunoSCAPE, and I'd like to hand over to Peppi to tell your story and introduce yourself.
Thank you, and I'm glad to be here and to share my story. Where shall I start? I'm a serial entrepreneur by accident. That's what I can say. So let me sort of go back. So I'm a scientist by training. So I work at once I finished my degree, did a postdoc, then we actually went to work at a company called Merck. Merck in the US is called Merck, but Merck in Europe is called MSD. But they have at that time, it was long time ago, it was in the mid 80s. Merck was very renowned for their research. And in one particular research site that really attracted me was Montreal, where they do a very original research in the leukotriene space. So I applied there and I got a job there. So I worked in Montreal for about 15 years. And then, during that time, I think I was not employee number 18 at that site. And, we actually became about 120 people. So it's not that large. It's like a biotech company, but it has a mothership, Merck mothership. that look after you in terms of finance and other things. But you know, for 120 people, we actually discovered 3 drugs and as a group, and then actually put those on the market, and actually another one in for animal health as well. And then I was asked to move down to Merck San Diego to help head up and set up the discovery group down in San Diego, where I am today. When we got to San Diego, you know, everything was nice and everything is moving really well for Merck. But then I think it's around 2005, you know, this was just the beginning of the financial difficulties that the whole world faced. And so we actually had to pause, and actually Merck has asked all the people to move back to the headquarters, and the headquarters at the time is in New Jersey. You know, when people move to San Diego, in particular, once they tasted the nice weather and the, you know, mild weather the whole year round, it's very, very hard for us to move back to the East Coast, whether it's Montreal or whether it's New Jersey. And it actually was in January, so it was actually snowing badly in New Jersey. So we decided to stay in San Diego. And of course, when you decide to stay there, you know, what are you going to do? So, you know, I always had in my back of my mind that, you know, at some point in my life, I'm going to start a biotech company or work in a biotech company. And so this just accelerated the whole process. And so, but, you know, since I'm a scientist that doesn't know anybody in the business space, so, you know, I think that was a good thing, because you don't have any fear, right? So I asked a friend of mine who works in the BD department at Merck, and we start and asking for names of what do you call VCs, and then so I got 3 VC names, and then talked to all of them, and then one of them in particular, I just flew up and met with them the day after I phoned them up, and we got along really well, and I gave a chalk talk to him, and then he gave us the funding, and that's how we started a company called Emeritus Pharmaceutical, which is, we worked on you know, respiratory diseases, and we worked on 3 projects. And the first one was licensed to GSK, the second one didn't go anywhere, and the third one was actually, the company was bought by Bristol Myers Squibb. And then then the scientists actually came out of that company, of Emeritus Pharmaceutical, and then formed another company called Inception Sciences, using a different business model, which we can go into later. And that one we actually partnered with the pharma first before we started the company, so it doesn't require a lot of a huge amount of cash. And we recently sold one of the companies to Roche for remyelination. And then last year, more or less, I retired. Doesn't want to work for VC anymore. So here I am speaking with you. Thank you.
Peppi, you know, great experience all the way through, and I envy where you are. You know, hope to be sitting where you are one day. You know, enjoying the fruit of your labor, and also really happy to have you on the panel. Shall we move to Terig? Can you give an introduction of yourself, and also how you got the company got involved or got started, and some of the audience are scientists also. Yeah, so just want to hear your story, Derek. Go ahead.
Yeah. So my story is probably a little bit different to a lot of people. So my background is in finance and business management. And prior to OHM, I spent more than 20 years with a big multinational publishing company called Elsevier, which is the largest scientific and medical publisher. I was always in the finance function or business management function. So I'm not a scientist. I always consider myself a scientist at heart, in that I'm a naturally curious person, and I love to know how things work. But that's not what I did when I was younger, and how my training worked out. And so I was at Elsevier for a long time, and been living in Singapore for about 15 years or so now. And I was lucky enough to work with a lady on my team. And one day, just my husband is starting something, and be very interesting if you guys would come and have a cup of coffee and meet each other. And so, from publishing in a large multinational organization to a biotech, which at the time had been just been founded with the two founders. I had that cup of coffee, and something I'd always wanted to do was work in a startup and be part of a startup. And so it seemed like a good idea at the time, and that was a little over 2 years ago. The company itself was conceived and founded by two experienced industry executives who had previously worked together. They'd worked together at a large global CRO, and had this idea for a while. And so back in the beginning of 2018, they founded the company. It was founded with friends and family money. We're a Singapore headquartered biotech company. We focus on small molecule development for oncology therapies. Like I said, till date, we've raised about $2 million, a little over $2 million US. Again, that's from friends and family. And that's been sufficient for us to be able to license in a number of interesting potential oncology drug candidates, including the first one that we licensed from A-Star. So our first licensing deal was with A-Star itself for a drug that was formerly known as ETC 206. And we have since progressed that through a phase 1 study, multiple ascending dose study, which has just completed. And we're now planning for a phase 2 basket trial with colorectal cancer and chronic myeloid leukemia as the indications that we'll be looking at. And it's been a hugely, for me, interesting experience. I'd never worked in a startup before, never had to raise funds before, never done biotech before. So for me, this was completely sort of stepping out of my comfort zone. But as I think Peppi said earlier, I was a little bit naive in what I thought I was getting myself into, and if I would have known how tough this business is at the start, I might have thought twice about it. But I'm glad that I made the jump. It helps to be a little bit naive at the start, because you think you can go out there and get things started and do everything, conquer the world, and part of the trick to the success of a startup is being able to maintain that belief. So to be able to have a team that sticks together and maintains that belief that we can take this forward through the tough times, and keep looking forward. So that's a little bit about how we came into being.
Thank you, Terig, and keep that naivety on. I think this is the adventure that we go on, and you must enjoy the ride. If you are, if you are worried every day about what's going to happen next year and 3 years or 5 years down the road, then you'll go crazy. I think the part of the fun is the adventure. So
Yeah.
thank you for sharing that the element, Terig. Now, Thomas, your background is a little bit different from again the rest of us, and that's I guess that's the beauty of this panel, that each one of us are pretty different in our background. So, Thomas, share with us your story about helping companies fundraise, and what do you see, in your personal experience about this inconvenient truths about biotech startups. Yeah.
Thanks to the organizers for inviting me, and getting to know all this, the panel and all of you. And I'm very happy to be here to share some of my experiences. So for me, in my past corporate life, I started off in banking and finance. So I've worked in GIC on strategic asset allocation, and then moving on to the management consulting field, where I focus on finance, risk, public policies. And like Terig, I'm not a scientist. I've never been involved in the biotech sector before this. So after I left my management consulting job, I decided to start a company on my own. So I run Alpha Square Advisors now. So we work with companies on strategy, finance, and risk management. We are industry agnostic, but interesting to say, we get a lot of deep tech projects right now on our plate. So in the biotech ecosystem, we are working on a couple of fundraising and strategic transformation projects right now. One of our clients is looking at a Series A plus round, and we work with them on developing the story. How do they talk to investors, and how do they entice investors to know what they are actually investing in. We have met many founders who are very excited about their technology, and then they go about talking to investors, but they get no response or very little response. And it's our job to help them to develop their story, to talk to investors, and to understand, for the investors' point of view, understand more about this field, this technology, or these companies that they're investing in, and how to collaborate and go from there.
Thank you, Thomas. I think you'll add another angle to this panel. Now, I'm going to kick off the next phase of our discussion here. I know that some questions are coming in. There are 2 questions coming in. We'll come to those questions a little bit later. But no, let's kick off with that whole conversation here first. And one of the key questions that people will have in audience will have is that what are the ingredients, right, of a successful startup? And I remember my own personal experience. I was in A-Star at that time. I was asked to start a company called Chris Bio in downstream bioprocessing. And A-Star was very generous. It says, Chun, this is a couple of $1 million. You pick a team from the A-Star people. We have 5,000 scientists and many administrators. Form a team, right? Go out there and make it work. And I was quite well funded, yeah. And then I started to try to go get customers, try to develop the technology. And when I talked to investors, they didn't like the way we are set up, right? They said that, okay, the management team, okay, you got a team, right? Okay, fine, you're cobbled together with A-Star staff, okay, understand that, but I don't really like it because you guys have no skin in the game. You got the money from A-Star. And anything goes wrong with the project, you guys can go back to your jobs in A-Star. You know what? Too risky for me to invest. Yeah. And of course, we push the technology, we push the commercialization a little bit further, but it got us not very far. So when I started my own company, I told A-Star I want to quit my job, and so the 2 other founders, we want to quit our jobs. No strings attached. And guess what? We're going to put in our own money. I broke the piggy bank. My wife got really mad with me, right? I broke my piggy bank, and we bootstrapped for 18 months. And every scientist put in some money. Each one of us have different financial capability. It doesn't matter. All of us have skin in the game. We started the company. People want to see the management team. People want to see the technology that works. People want to see your business model. How are you going to make money for investors? in the long run or in the short run, whatever, right? Even if you're developing a drug 15 years down the road, there must be light at the end of the tunnel. So the question is actually first for Peppi. Peppi, you've seen a lot of teams, right? You are a drug hunter. So what do you want to see, and what are the factors of success, and what are some of the pitfalls that people need to avoid? Yeah, why don't we start with you? Yeah.
Yeah. So the first thing, I mean, I think you said that very well. When actually, Thomas mentioned it too. As a scientist, we tend to, when we go to do a pitch, it's very scientific. And the investors, I tell you, they have an attention span of 2 seconds. If you don't catch them in that 2 seconds, the first 2 seconds, they bring out their, at the time, I will still remember, they bring out their BlackBerry. You remember that's BlackBerry?
BlackBerry, yeah.
Yeah, they start typing in there, and you know that you're done, right?
You're done.
You got no chance at all. Okay, so you have to really paint a picture, have a what I call an elevator pitch. That when you go from first floor to 10th floor, and if you haven't told the story well enough, I don't think you have a shot. And the two things that I think is really important after you paint the picture is that you got to have the team. The team is absolutely important. It's more important than the science. Yes, you have to have a very compelling science, but the team is actually more important, at least from the investor that I have experience with. And the reason is this, right? Science, it comes and goes. You turn the cards over, the data is not there, the data is wrong, or it's gray. It happens all the time, right? But the team, if you have a good team, they know how to finesse it. They know how to get around it. They can get it onto a new program. They can move forward. And the investors are really investing in the team, of course, with compelling science. I thought those are the two ingredients. So those are the two main things that I find, that team, and I think a lot of us, when I first started, I was a scientist. I actually don't even know what some of the financial terms that we use that are sort of around, like step up. What's a step up means, in finance, and all that stuff, pre-money, post-money, all that. But what it is that you have to build a team that can actually work together from different disciplines. And some of the scientists always ask, we don't need a CEO. We can do just as well. Why pay so much money to a CEO? In fact, that's probably the worst attitude to have in front of the VC, because they're going to say, you're going to be in the lab and hammering all these details out. Who's going to be talking to the bankers, the other investors? Because as soon as you get your first round, you should be on the road for your second round already, because it's going to take some time. Okay, so a CEO is a must, and a business person is a must. Most of the people like myself who are scientists don't realize that until somebody stake into your head and you actually experience it, how important a BD person and a CEO are. I leave it at that for now.
Thanks, Peppi. I wanted to laugh, and then after that I realized that I will also be laughing at myself, because I started with a founding group. I was a CEO, and I did a lot of the stuff, fundraising and other stuff, right? Then we got after the Series B funding round, my investors told me, Choon, you need to hire a CFO. I said, why do I have to pay all this high salary to hire a CFO? I can do everything myself. We don't have to waste the money. But now that I am running the company and expanding it, I was so glad we have a CFO. And Terig, this question is going to come at you, right? You are the CFO, and how important it is to have the team. But actually, we don't bring everybody on at one time, right? And it's a phased approach. I know over here, Rosalind Chu asked a question about when you first started, she's in cell therapy. She's trying to bring in experience in GLP, CGMP, and other kinds of expertise. So you have to determine when you bring in who at what time, and at what burn rate, right? So as a CFO, can you comment on that? Yeah.
Yeah, it's absolutely right. And to be honest, my story is probably a little bit unusual because I was there from the start. But that's sort of almost an accident of being in the right place at the right time and being part of that founding team. But just so you might wonder, well, so how did the startup be able to afford all these senior executives from
Yes.
the previous MNCs? Well, we've all worked for at least 12 months during this startup phase. As everybody came on board, we all spent basically 12 months earning our stake in the company. So that's how the company could afford it, because we took equity as payment. We also invested our own money as you did, so to show commitment to the investors. Everybody on the management team invested their money, and I think back to the point about the team. I think it's important to have diversity in that team. Yeah. So I'm not a scientist. You say, well, what business do you have being in a biotech company? Well, actually, I get to ask the stupid questions that maybe nobody else thinks about, because they're very focused on the science. They're from the business. They don't think to ask the obvious questions that investors might ask, for example. So by having somebody with that sort of, again, maybe I'm back to naivety, but be able to ask those questions, you can think about how you then present the company and address those questions to a broader audience. And I think that's one of the benefits of having a diverse team. I will also say, just in terms of, again, when the time is right, having a CFO on the team, one of the angles, of course, is being a biotech company, you spend a lot of money. You engage with CROs, and you engage in some very big long-term contracts, and you want to have someone who is able to spend time crunching those numbers and negotiating with your suppliers and your partners, and that's not necessarily something that your scientists are going to want to do or are going to have time to do. And that is, that's how you make your $2 million go $4 million worth of value, if you like.
Yeah.
You can also, you don't have to hire them. You can also rent them, right?
Yes.
I mean, if you need a CMC person, a GLP tox person, you can rent these people, regulatory person. There's a lot of these people around that, some of them are very, very experienced, and if you find them, you can. I think you can make your cash go a long, long way.
Yes. Peppi, this is a point that I was hoping to bring out. And there are different models that startup companies can stretch their dollar. Even the CFO in the beginning, there was some freelance consultants who are able to do the CFO role for stock options. So you don't have to pay them. You give them some stock options when the company succeeds. You pay them later. This is to help you preserve cash. So Peppi talk about consultants. So there are different models for you to stretch your investment dollar a little bit further. But the key thing is that you need to know what needs to get done, and project manage it, and figure out what resources you can bring in at the right time. Thomas, how do you see companies manage that process of preserving cash, right? And stretching and making sure that they hit milestones as they progress the company. Yeah.
Right. If you think about it, a biotech startup, the revenue is going to come in 7-10 years later. So, preserving that, keeping the burn rate down, and then preserving that cash is so important for startups. I've worked with a couple of startups who ran out of cash before they could, complete what they want to do, and then they got stuck, and then they go around looking to raise, and it takes 6 to 12 months for them to fundraise, and that stops the progress of the projects that they are doing. So yeah, so one of the ways is having an outsourcing strategy. I think that everything, you don't have to do everything in-house. Where possible, outsource it, in whether it's in development work or in clinical trials, maybe some preclinical phase of the project. You should certainly consider outsourcing as one of the strategies that you adopt in to preserve the cash that you have. Yeah.
Since we are talking about cash, panel members, I think one of the key things we are seeing through the Q&A are people are concerned about how do you raise funds for startup, right? Many people here are very familiar with writing grants, and then getting the grant given to them, and they can, whatever they need is all in the grant. But for biotech startups, you are spending as you are raising, as you are operationalizing, all at the same time. So what I think they want to know, how can they secure funding for their spin-off companies? What is the what are some of the options they have, and what is the funding ecosystem like for funding such a biotech spin-offs startup companies? Yeah. Thomas, you are familiar with some of the grants, right? That is available in Singapore. Maybe we can start there, and then because I think Terig and Peppi are probably more into the VC fundraising. Maybe we start with you first, Thomas. Yeah.
Yeah. So in Singapore, we have the various ESG grants. You have the grants from the organizations like A-Star. So besides funding, I think one other sources would be angel investors, but typically we see angel investors coming in. They could be folks with experiences, background in science, and then they could actually look at it and value and say that this is an interesting science that you've got there, and I think there's a business that can be made out of it. We've got family officers who also might not be having a focus on science. We have one family office who's in the construction sector, but says that I want to diversify, I want to look at certain biotech assets or companies to invest in. So that's another area where they could potentially look at funding. But I also want to bring out one interesting concept that's called royalty financing. So for example, you got your assets to a clinical phase, and then so maybe early to mid clinical assets, and you have companies like Royalty Pharma, Zoma that can do royalty financing. It's non-dilutive, non-recourse, and then for example, for Zoma, they traditionally invest about less than $25 million into this early to mid stage clinical assets. So royalty financing, I think, is another way where biotechs can look to raise some money for their operations, for their projects.
Yeah. So Thomas advocates the crazy rich Asian approach, with family offices and wealthy individuals also. And actually, there are some good companies that started that way.
Yeah.
Then of course, Terig, what do you think about that source of financing vis-a-vis, let's say, people call the smart money from the VCs, right? And how smart is this smart money, and and what's the difference? Some of these different approaches, and what is your preference, Terig?
So I think there's so for us, like I said, we've started with what I would call friends and family. So these would be also people that we've worked with in the past, and advisors to the company as well. But I would say another source of smart money might be high net worths or people who have worked in the industry for a long time and have been successful. So we get a lot of interest from people who actually are, I would say, smart investors, in that they understand the risks that they're taking. They understand at least some aspects of the science. They've typically been industry leaders at some point in time, and maybe they've retired, maybe they've had a successful exit, and I think in biotech there's a lot of you can approach a lot of family offices and they will say, well, we don't really understand enough about the science to be able to make a decision, or we just find it too risky. We know early stage biotech carries a high risk, and so it's really it's a bit of a balancing game between reaching out far and wide, but also finding the investors that are more likely to invest because they understand the nature of the business in the first place. But going back to the point that Thomas made about the funding ecosystem here in Singapore and the Enterprise Singapore support, I think it's obviously it's very important to make the most of every dollar that you get from an investor. And I think there are a number of schemes that will allow you to do that, and a number of different grants that will allow you to do that. And I think that's something which is it's a must to look into all of those things and make sure that you're leveraging on what the ecosystem has to offer, because every penny helps and every penny matters. And there are some good schemes. So for early stage startups, I think it's a relatively supportive environment.
Thank you, Terig. Peppi, you are sitting in San Diego in the US. All right, the US is actually a more mature ecosystem compared to what we have in Singapore. And you are, a drug hunter, and you are incubating a couple of biotech companies, and you've invested in them, right? So I think, from my experience in immunoSCAPE, after trying to secure funding in Asia, the last round was led by a San Diego VC called Anzu Partners. So we closed 11 million US in January. And more and more, I can see that I need to go into the US market, and I need to get funding from there to help to get smart money to open doors there. So it's definitely a more mature ecosystem. I am bracing myself to learn new stuff about the US ecosystem in terms of funding. Maybe you can share with us and the audience here what your observations are in terms of making sure that we pitch ourselves correctly. And I think, one challenge is that we are so far away.
Yeah, I think, so I have a totally different experience, fundraising experience than the rest of you. Funding, because the VC ecosystem here is very mature, as you mentioned. If you're in San Francisco, San Diego, or Boston, or New York, these are, I would call very healthy VC market. And in fact, I would say that I would say, I won't go as far as that, but it's more almost like the VC are fighting for companies, right?
Okay.
Right. And there's a lot of companies, but you better pitch directly well. Your pitch has to be concise. They have to understand it in, as I said earlier, in 2 seconds. After 2 slides, if they don't get it, you're done. It's very competitive, and there are many types of VCs. Some VCs invest only in mature products, like clinical stage compounds. Other VC only invest in the early stage or incubation stage, and there are other VC who only invest in medtech. So it's very second. So you have to know where you want to go and who to direct to. And so apart from that, otherwise I think it's the same as what you guys are facing. But what I like to bring up is actually another source of funding which we used very successfully. Especially in the time of which we might be going to in the near future, is in the time of where money becomes scarce, right? So we were fundraising we were starting Inception around 2005, 2008, 2010-ish. And, the VC were reeling back, the money was getting tight and the IPO market was shut, which is not in the case today. And so what we did was, Verson and I got together and said, we have to find a business model whereby only one VC can fund the company, multiple companies, without having to use other VCs' money, because some of the VC were not able to raise any money, right? So this is the way we did it. We call it a build to buy, okay? So in other words, we don't build a company until somebody buys it, all right? So it sounds very strange. So what we do is we knock on the doors of the big pharma and say, we have this idea, and why don't we work together? You fund us, and when you get to a certain stage that we agreed upon, whether it's phase 1, end of phase 1, or GLP tox study or IND, you buy us at a agreed upon price. Right. And there, you don't have to compete with the rest of the other companies, because you took the risk with us. We're not going to charge you market price, but something that's fair for between the two of us. And so we did a lot of those. We did actually 5 companies like that, with Roche, Shire, Bayer, and a couple of others. And one of them was sold about a year and a half ago for remyelination. We got to IND. So we got to IND and they bought it for remyelination. And the investor got, I'm going to say close to 10x.
Wow. Amazing.
Right?
Amazing.
Yeah. So that's one way of doing it, except that, you need a connection, a bridge into this pharma. You got to know, they got to be, you got what I call friendly pharma, whereby you know them and you know what they want, and you don't go and compete with their you don't compete with their scientists directly. What you do is you come and do something adjacent to what they need. Okay? I can explain to you, how we go about doing it, but I think it's outside the scope of this discussion. But you don't compete with them. You go with adjacent to them and actually make them look good if it's actually successful.
Totally. Peppi, you are describing paradise to the rest of us,
Well, when the temperature is 20 degrees centigrade the whole year round.
Yeah. So actually, while chatting, the time flies by very quickly, and I would like to just throw open one last question about next steps for many of the scientists here, the audience here who wants to start a company, and at the same time address several of the questions that came through. Sandrine, you asked a question about data. So how can we prove to investors that there is value in data and fundraising? I am looking at this problem myself because we generate a lot of immune profiling, but the investors don't look at your data. The investors look at what your data can do, where the money will come back in. For us, it is about speeding up drug development and discovery process with our data, and that is equal to how much in terms of a number, right? A value, all right? So you must be able to tell them that you can convert data into practical use, and then how you're going to be getting revenue from there. So data is a very important part. People are raising good money from there. Wei Yuan, you talk about speed to market. Definitely speed to market and managing all these moving parts that we talk about, and then getting quickly to the market before your competitor or competing biotech somewhere in San Diego does, right? And you're working here in Singapore, and maybe there are certain advantages by being in here that you can get. Maybe certain patients that you can access here that is not so many in the US or other places. That's how you intend to win. So you need to be able to articulate that to investors and how you intend to win in this space. So for Resilient, I hope we have answered your question a bit up front already about this expertise. You need to hunt, you need to network. So your business people or your network is important. We expand our network. This morning, I talked to an advisor out in Seattle. He agreed to be my advisor. Bingo. He's going to be on the scientific advisory board. Big name, knows a lot of people, relevant people in my space. I'm going to tap on his network to reach out to certain people. That's how we want to move fast. Right? It's a scientific network. It is a business network. It is a legal network. It's a finance network. It's a funding network. You need to develop these networks very quickly. One good thing is Singapore government tries to help with Enterprise Singapore, EDB. Talk to these people in A-Star like Vanessa, Susan, Nayu, EDDC. They will help you with your network. So hopefully that answers a couple of these questions that are on that are posted. And in the last 7 minutes, I thought of talking about next steps. And I'll first give you guys my email address, choonpeng.ng@immunoscape.com. Right, I walked the journey from being in A-Star into a startup situation. I made some mistakes. Chris Bio, Q-Star, died an infant death. Despite a lot of funding, and then immunoSCAPE is progressing well, even though we broke our piggy banks and didn't have a lot of funding. It is really knowing what it takes to be successful. So I'll be happy to share, right, with many of you here. Now, in terms of next steps, Thomas already talked about grant. That's an easy way to start. This is non-dilutive. Right, Terig, Peppi talk about forming the team, diverse team. You don't have to bring everybody on board immediately. You can bring them and you can look for consultants in the field. I know a few of these consultants, whether it's in finance or whatever. You can bring a full-time person later on. I have a part-time, even somebody to do my invoices. I had somebody part-time. We just had full-time about a year ago only, after 2 years in the company. I collected mail from the virtual office myself. Now I have my staff to do it for me, right? So you're willing to do, I submitted CPF wrongly a couple of times. I've gone to CPF board. So Terig laughs because his team does it. Yeah. So we do, when you want to expand, you need to build a team. So about next steps, happy to interact with you guys. Across the panel, just one last question for you. What do you suggest for the audience here? The key next steps when they want to spin off a company. Terig, yeah.
Well, I think obviously there's no time like the present. So I think people thinking, well, when should I? Is now a good time? There's a pandemic going on. I think if you've got that idea and that passion, then the best time to start is now. And I think the first thing to do is to put an hour aside each day. If you're still in a full-time job somewhere, put an hour aside each day, each evening, and you start to write your plan. You start to think it through, and to your other point, start to build the network. I think that's a critical aspect that will allow you to hit the ground running. There's and again, if anybody wants to reach out after this, I'm happy to tell them more about my experience and maybe some of the tips and tricks.
Yes. Great. Thank you, Terig. Thomas, any last words for the audience?
Right. You a lot of us might think that it's a pandemic right now. It's difficult to raise funds. But from our experiences, talking to investors, Singapore or overseas, we actually see quite a few VCs with a lot of dry powder coming out to say that we are actually looking to invest. What kind of companies do you have? We are happy to explore. So we've been working with these investors, and we see that the interest is real, and the interest is there. So if you have a good ideas, start crafting it, start thinking of how to say it in terms of a story, but don't keep mentioning the technology, because sometimes the investors don't understand that. So think of what kind of problem you are solving, how big is the market that this problem resides in, and work from there. And then like Terig, if you guys have any questions, just reach out to me, reach out to us. I think we can help you with it.
I echo Thomas's point. immunoSCAPE closed $11 million US January 2020. We are in a lot of money in the bank. Then there's a spillover interest. Investors are knocking on my door at a time like this. Of course, we appeared in Straits Times about our work in COVID-19. We are collaborating with Massachusetts General Hospital, Johns Hopkins, and University of Parma in Italy, developing, co-developing vaccines with Arcturus in San Diego. We are doing good work, and people are knocking on our doors now because this is the best time to invest in a biotech that is making a difference. So we were doing immuno-oncology, pivoted into COVID, still doing immuno-oncology. So it's about what we are making. When you are making a difference, people take notice, and there is enough dry powder. It's about believing in what you are doing. Of course, take some risk in the beginning, and yeah, we are now talking about the additional round. Even though we have dry powder, because we want to scale up faster in the US, we have a data strategy that can be applied and to speed up drug development. So it's about that precision, about making a difference in the real world with your technology. So last but not least, Peppi, you're the most experienced amongst us. Been there, done that. Sitting comfortably in San Diego. I want to be at your seat. In a couple of years' time. It's very tiring.
So I think the what I want people to take away with is that when you're thinking about compelling science, the investor who invests in you, if your product or what you want to do has a hook, it has to be either unique mechanism, you're addressing something, you're establishing a new standard of care, improving the side effect profile. You're in a therapeutic area where it's unmet need, you're changing the administration mode from IV to oral. But this is, there's a saying, in Canada, I was working in Montreal for so long, you probably know Wayne Gretzky, right? So he said that, he skated to where the puck is going to be. So that's where you want. You don't want to be working on what everybody else is working. You want to be working on 5 years from now, this company going to want this. And what are those? Those are the key. And then your company will be very, very successful.
Fantastic. And what a nice way to end off this panel discussion here. Vanessa, are you there?
Yes, Choon Peng.
All right. I think we are on the dot at 11:59. And back to you. And thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Choon Peng. Well, thank you everyone for your time. Once again, on behalf of the organizing team, I'd like to thank our distinguished guests, Peppi, Terig, Choon Peng, and Thomas, for sharing their precious time as well as giving us such a wonderful session today. I hope what Choon Peng said is correct. Biotech has many dry powders coming in the ecosystem. Certainly, I think everyone here will be excited to receive the dry powders. I would also like to thank everyone's participation. If you have enjoyed as much as we have, please do connect us via our Facebook and our LinkedIn social media platform via the QR code link. I will flash it out back here in a minute. And in the meantime, I think some of the panelists here are quite open for chats with the folks. So do drop us a note if you want to get connected to our panelists, and we will share that connection with you. And with this, I wish you all a good lunch break ahead and have a good day. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.